November 14, 1944. Via Posta, Mirandola, northern Italy. 4:47 a.m. Giovanni Russo lay flat in the ditch, his face pressed into cold mud that smelled like diesel and rotting leaves. 50 meters ahead, the cobblestone street looked exactly as it had for 200 years, except for the section he'd spent 3 nights hollowing out like a rotten tooth. The Panzer IV was 2 minutes away. He could hear the transmission whining as it downshifted for the turn onto Via Posta. This was the only route wide enough for armor between the rail depot and the German garrison. They used it every Tuesday and Friday 5 a.m. like clockwork. Giovanni's hand shook, not from cold, from the knowledge that if the false cobblestone cap collapsed even 5 seconds early or 5 seconds late, the crew would see the canal water boiling up through the street and reverse out. And then they'd find his pressure valve behind the bakery wall. And then they'd find his wife and 2 daughters in the apartment above the bakery. The engine noise grew louder. Iron track links clattered against stone. He gripped the rope in his right hand, 1 pull. That's all it would take. Giovanni Russo had been a plumber for 31 years. Not the kind who fixed leaky faucets in rich men's villas. The kind the town called at 3 a.m. when the main line under Piazza Martiri backed up and flooded 4 streets. The kind who understood pressure, gravity, flow rate, and the exact point where old terracotta pipe would crack under load. Before the war, he'd replumbed half of Mirandola's oldest quarter, including the medieval canal gates that regulated water from the Sicchia River into the town's irrigation network. He knew every valve, every junction, every place where the system wanted to go and where the Romans had forced it to stay. He knew that water, when trapped and released suddenly, doesn't flow. It hammers. The Panzer problem had started 6 weeks earlier, right after the Gothic line collapsed and the Germans fell back into the Po Valley. A single tank, Panzer Rose F. H, number 332 painted in white on the turret, had been assigned to highway security along the Mirandola-Modena road. Every Tuesday and Friday it rolled through town, a moving reminder that the partisans in the hills could be crushed in 90 seconds if they tried anything bold. And it worked. The partisans had tried. October 9th, Michel Baraldi, 19, farmhand from Concordia, stepped out with a Molotov cocktail. The bottle shattered against the glacis plate and burned out. The turret swung. Michel's body was found in 3 pieces. October 14th, 2 men tried to jam a log across the tracks while the crew slept. The camp guard shot one Luigi Fontana, 43, baker, father of 5, in the spine. He died on the cobblestones in front of the church. October 23rd, someone placed a captured tellerman in the road. The Panzer rolled over it. Nothing, dud. The SS spent the next day arresting anyone who looked at them wrong. Father De Luca, the parish priest, was hung from the bell tower for failing to report sabotage. He was 61. He'd baptized half the children in Mirandola. By November, no one would go near the Panzer. It owned Via Posta the way a wolf owns a blood trail. Giovanni had been thinking about water the whole time. November 3rd, partisan meeting in the farmhouse cellar west of town. 18 men, 3 rifles, 1 British radio. The commander, Stefano, a former police sergeant, stood in front of a chalkboard with a sketch of the Panzer. We can't punch through the armor. We can't get close enough to use fire. We can't mine it because they sweep the road of ideas. Silence. Giovanni raised his hand. The younger men looked at him. 52 years old, gray hair, hands scarred from pipe wrenches and solder burn. What if we don't go through the armor, Giovanni said. What if we go through the floor? Stefano frowned. Explain. The belly armor on a Panzer I is 16 millimeters, the thinnest point on the tank. But you still can't shoot through it. Giovanni stepped to the board. But you don't have to. Via Posta runs parallel to the old Sicchia Canal, 30 meters away. The canal's 2 meters higher than the street because of the Roman grading. If I dig a lateral tunnel from the canal to a weak point under the road, I can flood the street from below. Flood it? No. Flood up. Giovanni drew quickly. I hollow out a section of road. Replace the surface with a fake cap. Wood frame, mortar, loose cobbles. I rig a pressure release valve from the canal. When the Panzer crosses the weak point, the cap breaks. The tank drops a meter into the pit. And then I release the valve. 60,000 liters of canal water under 2 meters of pressure hits the tank from below. It doesn't have to pierce the armor. It just has to find the seams, hatches, vision ports, hull joints. Panzers aren't watertight. They're designed to ford rivers slowly, not to be hit from underneath by a hydraulic hammer. The room was silent. Stefano shook his head. You're describing engineering work that would take a crew of 10 men a week to do. The Germans patrol every night. "I can do it in 3 nights," Giovanni said. "I've dug lateral drains under that street before. I know where the old Roman foundation stones are. I know which cobbles I can lift without mortar dust giving it away. And if it doesn't work, then the Panzer gets stuck in a hole and we've annoyed them." Stefano looked at the others. One of them, Marco, a teenager with a German rifle he didn't know how to use, laughed. "Drown them like rats in a sewer." "I like it." Stefano didn't laugh. "And if you're caught digging," Giovanni didn't answer. Everyone knew the answer. Stefano sighed. "No, absolutely not. It's not partisan work, Giovanni. It's plumber work. It's insane." He tapped the chalkboard. "We need real weapons. Explosives. Rifles. Not flooding tricks." The meeting moved on. Giovanni went home that night and didn't sleep. He kept seeing Luigi Fontana's body on the stones, kept hearing Father De Luca's neck crack when the rope went taut. At 2 a.m., he got out of bed, pulled on his work coat, and walked to the canal gate. Night 1, November 8th. The canal ran behind a row of old stone houses, invisible from the main road. Giovanni started digging at the base of the east gate where the brick was older and the mortar had turned to sand. He worked in total silence. A short-handled spade, the kind he used for tight underfloor work. Every 4 scoops he stopped and listened. The lateral tunnel only had to be 30 meters. He dug along the old Roman drainage line. He'd repaired it twice, so he knew it was there, a void space behind the medieval brick where he could crawl. By dawn, he'd gone 8 meters. He covered the entrance with a rotted door and a pile of trash. Night 2, November 10th, 22 meters. The tunnel was just tall enough to crawl through. His shoulders bled from scraping brick. Twice he heard footsteps above, German patrol on Via Posta, and froze face in the dirt, barely breathing. He reached the center line of the street. Above him, cobblestones, gravel bed, Roman foundation. He dug up into the gravel, carefully feeling for the edge of the foundation stones. There, a meter-wide gap between stones. Luck, or the Romans had used wood spacers that rotted out centuries ago. He dug up into the gap, creating a vertical shaft, stopped just below the cobbles. Night 3, November 12th, the hardest part. He had to remove the cobblestones from below, build a wooden frame to hold them in a false cap and make it look untouched from above. He worked with a pry bar and a brush. Every stone he loosened, he cleaned. Every gap he filled with dry mortar dust that would look old in daylight but would dissolve the second the frame cracked. By 4 a.m., he had a cap. 3 layers of wooden planks, arranged like a trapdoor, covered with the original cobblestones. From above, it looked perfect. From below, it would collapse under 25 tons of Panzer. Then the valve. He crawled back to the canal, sledgehammered a hole in the brick gate, and installed a slide valve he'd stolen from the town's irrigation. A rope ran from the valve through the tunnel to a hole behind the bakery wall. One pull and the canal would have a straight run into the pit under Via Posta. He tested it at 4:30 a.m., pulled the rope 6 inches. Water began to trickle into the tunnel. He closed it. The pressure was good, very good. He went home, washed the mud off, kissed his wife. She didn't ask where he'd been. November 14th, 4:49 a.m. The Panzer turned onto Via Posta. Giovanni could see it now in the pre-dawn gray. Commander in the cupola scanning rooftops. The same crew as always. They looked bored. The tank rolled forward, slow, 15 kilometers per hour. Tracks clanking 20 meters from the trap. 15. Giovanni's hand tightened on the rope. 10. The commander lit a cigarette. 5. The front left track touched the edge of the false cap. The wood frame cracked like a gunshot. The Panzer's nose dropped, sudden, violent, into the pit. The engine roared as the driver hit the throttle in panic, but the track spun in empty air. The whole tank angled forward, turret down, rear end rising. Giovanni pulled the rope, the valve open. For 1 second, nothing. Then a sound like a cannon firing underground. The canal, pressurized by 2 meters of elevation, exploded into the tunnel and hit the pit at full force. Through the driver's visor, the bow machine gun port, the hairline seams where the hull plates met. The tank had been designed to ford a river at walking speed, not to be hit from below by a hydraulic ram. Inside, the crew had 3 seconds to understand what was happening. Then the water reached the ammunition. The tank didn't explode. It gurgled, a deep bubbling roar as the interior filled faster than the hatches could drain it. The commander tried to climb out of the cupola. He got his torso out. Then the weight of the water inside pulled the tank deeper into the pit. and the street collapsed further, and the canal roared louder, and the commander slipped and fell back inside. The engine coughed, died. Steam poured from the exhaust. Giovanni watched from the ditch as the water kept coming. The pit was now a whirlpool, the tank a sinking stone. Bubbles broke the surface, then nothing. It took 4 minutes for the Panzer to go completely silent. When the German recovery crew arrived at dawn, they found the tank half submerged, turret barely visible above the waterline. They pulled 3 bodies out of the hull, drowned. The driver was still strapped into his seat. The German engineers stared at the collapsed street, the tunnel, the canal valve. One of them, an Oberfeldwebel, crouched at the edge and looked into the pit for a long time. Then he stood and said in German, "What kind of partisan does this?" No one answered. By November 20th, 3 more reverse flush traps had been built in towns along the Po. 2 by partisans who'd heard rumors, 1 by a former sewage worker in Reggio. German armor stopped using predictable routes. The SS arrested 40 people in Mirandola. They never found Giovanni. He'd been careful to dig the tunnel from a section of canal wall that 20 different plumbers had accessed over the years. No fingerprints, no witnesses. The partisan radio called it the drowned Panzer. German field reports called it a subsurface hydraulic mine of unknown design. No officer ever wrote it into a manual. Giovanni Russo survived the war, returned to plumbing, fixed the same canal gate he'd sabotaged, re-bricking the valve hole in 1946. He died in 1961. The obituary called him a skilled tradesman and quiet member of the community. At his funeral, 7 men who'd fought as partisans stood in the back of the church. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Manuals don't remember the men who turned tools into weapons, but the ones who lived because of those weapons do.